one in the oven. So we're gonna bring that into Blender and take a look at it.
Yep.
I think we're ready to go there.
Let's do that.
So let's switch over. I'm gonna do my scene stuff here. Okay, so another thing we want to plug, Blender. This is Blender 2.8. And if you have used Blender before, maybe a while ago, it might have been an earlier version of Blender. And this particular version that they came out with only a few months ago, they finished, even though they've been working on it quite a long time. Um, Complete overhaul of the UI. A lot of stuff has been rebuilt from the ground up, and so um, I've really loved using it. Honestly, that's why I'm wearing my Blender T-shirt right now. I'm totally plugging them, but uh, it didn't take me that long to learn it. I had been using Maya and other tools like that for many, many years, and I've gone to Blender. I haven't looked back. It's really, really great. Open source software for the win.
Yeah.
But we're going to go ahead and just starting with a new scene here in Blender. Uh, I'm a little reluctant to start getting into all the controls of Blender. There's
Oh,
a
we
lot to
can
it,
turn
but
on the
I don't
hotkey thing in
I don't
here,
know if I
right?
have that plug-in, but
Oh,
let me double check. I should have prepared, but let's take a look at our add-ons. Oh, this is probably doing a weird thing on the stream, but it's like
hotkey.
is it
No. Okay.
or it's like screencast or something. There's some yeah, I don't have it.
Okay. We'll just
I'll try my best
yeah, we'll try our
to
best
just say
to.
it. But anyway, to tumble around the viewport in here, you only use the middle mouse click and drag, and then to pan, you hold Shift and do the same thing, the middle mouse. So that's pretty much all I'm doing here, unless I'm using the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Um, but all we need to do really is to first go to File, Import, and one of the nice things about Blender 2.8 is built into it
Ooh,
is a
this is being blocked by our
yeah, I'm
stream.
blocked by us. It's annoying. Should I fix it? I could.
Yeah. Can you just mute
Oh,
that?
look, I'm going to move us out of the way. We can pretend.
It's working.
Okay, so I can go to File, Import glTF
Yes.
2.0. And this will allow you to import either a glTF or a GLB file, which are essentially the same. One is in a. You want to talk about the format differences?
Yeah. So in glTF, there's a couple different ways of doing the same format. In this case, Sketchfab gives us back a zip file which contains a couple files in there. So it's got this scene.gltf file, but then it also has this textures directory which contains all the textures. And so gltf, if you're a web developer or programmer, you might be familiar with JSON. It's a text-based format that kind of looks like JavaScript objects. And glTF is just basically JSON. It's structured in a specific format, and you can actually open it up and you can look at it and you can kind of figure out what everything does. It's pretty cool. But then there's a single file version of it called GLB binary, and a lot of places out there also distribute GLB files as well. So,
Cool. I just turned off the. I just realized the text was still on there. It said
oh
somewhere
yeah,
in Canada. We just wanted to give a shout out to Elgin,
yeah,
who was our third partner here on this feed. She had a last minute emergency and couldn't make it. So we hope everything's okay.
yep.
And just yeah, wanted to acknowledge her. We wish her well. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and import this. It's just called scene.gltf that got downloaded from this Achilles heel model from Sketchfab. Um, and when it comes in, uh, it might do some weird things, look a little bit different than you expected, depending on how it got translated into a glTF file. But in this case, it looks like it added a couple of these big markers in here, and I'm going to zoom in. It is consistent with how it came in and
Yeah,
spoke.
it's
It's pretty
small.
small, and right now we're not really seeing the textures. Up here in the top, I'm going to switch to texture mode, which you can actually do by hitting the letter Z on your keyboard and a little pop-up will show up, and you
No,
can
that's cool.
switch
I didn't
to
know that.
wireframe, you can switch to solid, you can switch to rendered or look dev. These are different modes that will show you textured, for example. But that it just switches between these different types up here. The
Like
other thing
legs.
that you may want to do if you really want to get a look at the triangles of this thing are to uh, there's a menu up here called overlays, and if you open that up, um, inside there under geometry, there's a checkbox that's now I'm blocking the other window. Let me slide this over here. Um, there's a button in there that says wireframe, and if you turn it on and turn this slider all the way up, because it I don't know why it has a slider. I guess it sort of like shows
It's like,
some of the
I
wire.
don't know.
By default, I don't think it's all the way up to one, but you turn it all the way up, you'll see them all. I guess it's if something's very high
Yeah,
poly, you can like bring it down a
it's a
bit.
lot of triangles.
There's a lot of triangles. It's a pretty clean model, though, I will say.
Yeah, it looks great.
Um, there's sometimes you get a model and it's got just like this what we call polygon soup, where everything is just like insane
Look at
triangles.
that
Some are
base.
huge, some are tiny.
Look at the
But the
base.
base, oh, let's look at the base. I'm also
Wow.
gonna open up and change my view uh, clipping
Yeah.
so that I can get a little closer to this thing. Let's set the camera clipping to like there. Now I can zoom in
Okay.
more. Oh boy,
And it's basically just a cube,
it's
more or
basically
less.
a cube. It's like sitting on a big bar of soap, and I don't really know what. I don't even know if we really need that pedestal.
Yeah, I think we could just get rid of it. It kind of has a pedestal in the
Yeah, it has it
around.
built into the model.
We could also use
Plus,
an architecture kit piece.
we could use an architecture kit
Hmm.
piece. We could make our own in this model and simplify it.
Yeah.
You'll also notice that the bottom of this thing has
Wow.
so many triangles just on the bottom that you will never ever see, and yet it still has to render them.
Hmm.
So fortunately, when this model came in, it looks like this base is actually made of two pieces.
Interesting.
You had a guess as to why,
Yeah,
right?
so one of them was 65,535 triangles, right? Yeah.
Good, good,
Yeah.
rough
So
guess.
yeah, so that's in computer graphics there's a cutoff in I think like WebGL1 or something like that for the number of triangles that you can store in a geometry. So I think that's a 16-bit floating point or yeah, or
That's
integer.
yeah.
So
This one alone, just if I hit tab to go into like edit mode, you can see way down at the bottom here.
so wait, how many triangles is the base in total? It's about like
Oh, if I select both,
yeah, you can see
and
that in the bottom corner.
that alone is 182,000
Okay, so we can get quite
triangles.
a bit of our budget back just by deleting the base and going with just a cube.
So I'm going to select those, hit X or delete um, to get rid of them. X. You can hit X again, or you just click it, delete.
Yep,
So now we've actually brought it down to about 100,000.
which is fine, but we're shooting for looking good on Quest. So
Like
let's
10,000,
I think we want to try
20,000.
and get our whole scene down to around 40 to 60. Can we do that?
I think so.
Okay,
Challenge accepted.
40 to 60,000.
Okay, so this guy, you know, here's the thing. With every model that you're trying to reduce down, um, you have to balance out what's important to you. And so sometimes it might be one particular part of the model, like maybe the character's face, in this case, the statue face is really important. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's the overall silhouette. I tend to focus more on that. I look at the model from far away and if it still resembles that model, that's what's important to me. If I lose some of the details, like maybe some of the folds of the fabric in the statue, it's not that important to me.
Hmm.
If it's going to be up against a wall, I might even think about ripping out some of these triangles in the back, just deleting them.
Yeah.
I'm never going to see them anyway. But every situation is different, and so in this case, um, I'm going to start by just trying to apply what is known as a modifier in Blender. And this modifier is called decimate. And what decimate does is it takes the geometry of the model and it tries to crunch it down into fewer of them all while trying to do its best to retain the overall shape of the model. And this is a really, really powerful tool within Blender. There's even like standalone software out there to try to do this, but Blender does it really, really well. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's selected, and make sure I'm in object mode, not edit mode, just so you know up at the top. There is I'm going to have to keep moving our little video out of the way, but up in the top of the 3D view, it says object mode right here. You can switch to edit mode. That lets you see all the individual vertices and faces. We just want object mode, and you can toggle between those with the tab key on your keyboard. Um, so I'm going to make sure I'm in object mode. And then I'm going to go over to this, what similar to Spoke, this properties type panel over here. And I'm looking for the one that looks like a little wrench. And that wrench is the modifier context tab. So up at the top, there's a little drop down that says add modifier. I'm going to click it, and I'm looking for one called decimate. And it happens to be right here. Um, and when you first select it, nothing happens. Like if I select decimate, the modifier now exists on the right panel, but nothing actually happens to the model. And that's because the default is to start out with the slider called ratio turned all the way up to 1. As we turn it down, it's actually going to look through the model and try to reduce the detail. So you'll see you can either click it and then type in a number, or you can just click and drag. And as I start turning this down from 1 to say 0.75, if you watch the model closely, uh,
Those triangles start
you see
going
triangles start
away.
to disappear. Again, Blender does a really fantastic job of trying to keep the silhouette of the model. Whatever algorithm they're using for this is pretty good. So like here I've brought it down to 0.389, almost zero point 0.4. And from back here, it really doesn't look very different to me. Um, I still see a lot of detail.
Yeah, and in game, like you're not gonna notice that.
Yeah, like you can toggle this modifier on off with this little screen
Hmm.
button at the top, and you can see it fully full wireframe, and then down quite a bit from there. And it's pretty negligible, I
Yeah,
think. Only if you were really close to the thing would you notice the difference. So kind of shows us photogrammetry, super cool. You can scan objects with it. Does not make very efficient models.
you just got to make sure you go in and you do this work when you want to bring them into hubs.
Yep. So that's looking pretty good. You'll notice as you scroll this thing, if you watch your statistics down in the very bottom of Blender window, um, it looks like a bunch of gobbledygook at first, but if you look carefully, it says tries, the number of triangles.
Hmm.
This before was 99.9 thousand triangles, and
Yeah,
now if I bring it down, uh,
38,
it's already down at 38. So this is
almost
quite,
39. Yeah,
yeah, which is interesting. The ratio is actually matching the number of triangles because we started at almost
right.
100,000.
Yeah,
So that stands to reason if I typed in like 0.25, it'll probably be about 25,000 triangles in this case. Doesn't always work out that way. Yeah, it's about 25,000. And that still looks pretty damn good. Like I said, I've lost a little detail in the face, but honestly, because the texture information is still there, you may not notice. If I go in and turn off that wireframe, like I can't really tell the difference between that and that on and off. Wow, barely a difference. Um, so super cool. Decimate is your friend. Um, there's a couple different methods of the decimate tool. You can choose collapse, which is the default. You can choose unsubdivide. This is more useful when your mesh is already just like a perfect grid of squares, because it'll sort of reduce them in a more even fashion. Um, and then the slider works a little differently. And then there's one called planar, which probably in this case is not what you want. It makes kind of an um, ugly wireframe because it's reducing based on angles. Um, so the collapse one is probably the one you want. You can also turn on triangulate so that as it reduces down, it always keeps them as triangles. Uh, some people get sort of they become sticklers about that, but that's fine. triangle count is now at 25,000. How do we feel about that? I think we could
I
go
think we
lower.
could go lower.
I mean, there's no harm. The cool thing is that this modifier is not destructive until you actually click apply, which we don't even have to do, which is cool. We'll show you that in a sec. Let's bring this down to like 0.15.
We had some we had a question in uh, Twitch chat.
Hmm.
So are we aware of a bug in the way Blender exports verts to glTF or imports? When I imported Blender glTF export, it's all triangles. I wonder if this causes issues with optimization in A-frame VR and hubs. Have you run into that? I
Uh,
think I've seen something similar to that. You
have
might want to try just using the most recent version of the exporter. Sometimes the master branch of the
That's a good
exporter is
point.
a little bit further along.
Yeah, remember the glTF importer exporter that Blender uses is still an add-on.
Yeah.
So you can actually go to the GitHub page for that add-on and get the latest version of it
Oh,
because
separate
they're
triangles. Every single one is a separate triangle? Hmm,
oh, that's not good.
that would be really bad.
Well, you know what? That actually brings up a good topic. That reminds me. With this decimate tool, I've read some things about it where some of the pro tips have been rather than just sliding it from 100% all the way down in one shot. Some people have said that they get better results when they go partway and then hit apply and then add a new one
Hmm.
and do it again. And I think the reasoning behind it was that it treats the model a little bit differently each step of the way. So like um, now if I reduce it another half, like it might do a better job.
Right.
I I'm not totally sure if that is true or not, but I thought I would just point that out. The other thing I wanted to point out is that as it's doing this reduction, there may still be a lot of redundant vertices. Like if you have two vertices right on top of each other or so close together um, that it still treats them as separate vertices. One of the things that you might want to try um, is to either apply this modifier at some point like this and then go into edit mode. So we're going to switch over to edit mode again.
Hmm.
Select all the vertices, which you can do by hitting the A key on your keyboard. And make sure you're in vertex mode. That is right next to the edit mode up here. There's vertex, edge, and face. You can actually use number 1, 2, and 3 on your keyboard, respectively, um, to switch between those modes. But if you're in vertex mode, hit A, that'll select them all, and then you can do what's called a merge of vertices that are within a certain threshold of each other. So if it'll look at this tool will look at them verts and say, oh, these two are really close together. Let's just like collapse them into one. You can access that quickly by hitting Alt M on your keyboard. And there's different types of merge. The one you want is the very bottom one called by distance. And then you'll see down here, again, I have to keep moving our little video feed around. Um, my apologies. Let's move this up. Down at the bottom, there's a little thing that opens that lets you play with the value. Um, so even at, if I turn it way up, like zero point 0.1, uh, given the size of this model, that's going to be all the verts. It got reduced down into one triangle. Now
Yeah,
that is going to perform
that's gonna
really
do really
well,
well.
but it looks nothing like the original model. So we're not going to do that. Instead, you can type in like 0.0001 or something and see what it looks like. And at the very bottom, it'll tell you how many vertices were removed. That was about 2,000 that got
2000 verts
removed.
for that little thing. That's pretty good. Still
Still
looks the
looks
same to me.
pretty good, but that still has 22,000.
Okay.
So I'm going to get out of this mode and maybe apply one more decimate to it
Okay.
um, and try to drop it in half if I can. It's pretty good. Now we're at like 11,000.
Okay.
I think that's a lot, but it's again, we're treating it like a hero model. I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, the cool thing about decimate and these modifiers is they're not actually destructive. If I hadn't kept applying them, but I actually did this time. Um, so when you go to export this, you can actually tell it export it in the state it's in right now, like
Yeah.
apply the modifiers and export. But we can leave them off if we want. I'm actually going to just hit apply. I'm happy with this. The one thing I will say is there are still a lot of triangles on the bottom
But you're never gonna see.
that we will never see these. So you can either manually go into edit mode and hit 3 and then select all these polygons and delete them. There's some handy tools for that. Like if you select one of them and you hit Shift G, G as in girl, and then choose select, it says select similar. Oh, select all the ones that are coplanar with this one.
So wait, that was Shift G?
Shift G,
Okay.
and then it tries its best. Okay, those are all exactly on the same plane as this guy. But down at the bottom again, you have a little slider you can like turn up. Oh, now it's getting more. Oh, but actually, is it getting too many? Let's look around the model. Oh, it started to get some of the
Oh
ones
yeah.
under his wrist. We don't want those.
So
So you,
it's doing coplanar, but in the entire
just in
model.
the whole model, like
Yeah.
it doesn't.
So we need to be careful of
So
that.
you got to be careful. I'm gonna hit Z to switch to wireframe mode again and zoom out a little bit and just make sure that I don't have some of these
Hmm.
selected up here. And I use this tool. If these tools aren't showing on your side panel, which again, I'm blocking them. If these tools aren't showing, you can hit the letter T, sign language, T for tools, and it'll toggle those in and out.
Okay.
I use this select box, and then I hold control and select all the ones I don't want. And it helps to be in wireframe mode when you do that so that you make sure you get all of them. If you're not in wireframe mode, then you'll need to like keep moving around your model because it will not select the ones that are occluded by the model itself. But anyway, that's pretty good. I might just grab a couple manually, and then once I have all the triangles I don't want selected, I can just hit X and choose delete faces. And it made a big hole in the model.
But we're gonna cover that up because we're just gonna place it into the floor.
Yeah, so we don't even care about that.
Perfect.
But that brought it down a little bit. Now we're under 11,000. We're at 10,794, which I can live with that.
Yeah.
Not too bad. Um, Goes without saying, you might want to save along the way instead of doing what I just did, which. But
We're
I gotta say, Blend